She was just a kid in row 9, until the pilot called her by a code name to save the plane. The hum of the airplane engines was the only sound that filled the cabin as passengers settled into their seats. Most of them were lost in their devices or quietly chatting with their neighbors, completely unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. Among them sat Emma Lane, a seemingly ordinary teenager with a backpack too heavy for her small frame and a notebook filled with doodles and cryptic symbols. She had been on countless flights before, but none felt as significant as this one. Emma had always been quiet, blending into the background. Row 9 was her preferred seat, the window side where she could watch the clouds drift by and let her imagination take flight. She didn't talk much about herself. In fact, most people assumed she was just another shy girl, lost in her own world. But Emma carried a secret, one that even she wasn't entirely aware of until today. It started like any other flight. Flight attendants walked up and down the aisles, offering snacks and drinks. Emma scribbled notes in her notebook, the pen moving rapidly as if guided by some unseen force. She barely noticed the passengers around her, focused instead on the patterns she was drawing, strange symbols that seemed nonsensical but somehow felt meaningful. Then, about 30 minutes into the flight, the calm of the cabin was shattered. A sudden alarm echoed through the plane, followed by the captain's tense voice over the intercom, "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We are experiencing a critical systems failure. I need all passengers to stay in their seats and follow crew instructions." Panic spread quickly. Passengers whispered anxiously to each other, their fear palpable. Flight attendants rushed up and down the aisles, trying to reassure people while checking on emergency protocols. Emma's heart raced, but not with fear. There was something in her that recognized the gravity of the situation, a memory, a skill, a part of her she had long suppressed. From the cockpit came another voice, calm but firm. "This is Captain Harlow. We have lost primary navigation and communication systems. We need manual override assistance. I need someone trained, someone who knows what to do." Emma froze. She had never heard the captain's voice before, but something about it made the hairs on her neck stand on end. Then, a moment later, a voice called out across the cabin, "Falcon. Row 9. Now." Emma's pen slipped from her fingers as the world seemed to tilt. "Falcon," she whispered to herself. That was a name she hadn't heard in years. Her father, a pilot and a covert operative, had taught her the ways of survival, navigation, and crisis management when she was just a child. Falcon had been her code name, used only in situations that required absolute precision and courage. She had promised herself she would never use it again. And yet, here it was, echoing through the cabin like a summons she could not ignore. Without thinking, she grabbed her backpack and followed the flight attendants toward the cockpit. Her knees shook, but she forced herself to remain steady. Every step reminded her of the training she had long buried under a normal life. The drills, the simulations, the endless hours of learning to trust her instincts. Inside the cockpit, the scene was chaotic. Lights blinked erratically, warning signals screamed silently, and Captain Harlow's hands moved frantically over the controls. "Thank God you're here," he said, his eyes widening as he recognized her. "Falcon. I didn't think anyone on this flight could handle this." Emma took a deep breath. The panic in the cockpit was contagious, but she had to remain focused. "What's the situation?" she asked, scanning the displays. "We've lost autopilot and main communication. The backup systems are offline. We have 30 minutes before we risk a catastrophic failure," Captain Harlow explained. "We need someone to manually recalibrate the systems while I stabilize the engines." Emma nodded, her mind working at lightning speed. She pulled a small device from her backpack, something she had always carried for emergencies. She connected it to the console, her fingers flying over the buttons, guided by muscle memory and intuition. For a moment it felt as if the plane was resisting her efforts, but then the systems began responding to her input. Lights blinked in sequence, alarms softened, and the plane steadied slightly. Meanwhile, Captain Harlow maintained control of the engines, glancing at her occasionally with a mixture of relief and astonishment. "Where did you learn to do this?" he asked. Emma hesitated, then realized the truth. She didn't need to explain. "Let's just say I was trained for emergencies," she replied, her voice calm despite the storm around them. Outside, the clouds churned ominously, thunder rolling in the distance. Passengers in the cabin remained unaware of the precise danger they were in, but Emma felt the weight of responsibility crushing her shoulders. Every second mattered, every decision critical. One wrong move could spell disaster. As the plane leveled slightly, she noticed a blinking warning on the navigation panel. It indicated a potential collision course with a storm system. Her heart pounded. This was the moment where training met reality. Emma recalculated, adjusted the trajectory, and engaged the manual override. The plane shuddered but responded, veering safely around the worst of the turbulence. Captain Harlow exhaled slowly, his hands finally relaxing. "Falcon, you've saved us all," he said quietly. Emma felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion, her body trembling from the adrenaline surge. When the plane finally stabilized, Emma allowed herself to sit back, her small hands shaking as she removed the device from the console. The storm had passed, leaving a serene sky bathed in golden sunlight. Passengers cheered, oblivious to the silent hero who had just averted disaster. One of the flight attendants approached her, smiling. "You're amazing." No one even knew what was happening. Emma smiled faintly, a mix of pride and modesty. "I just did what I had to," she said softly. The memories of her father, her training, and the name, Falcon, flooded back. She realized that even though she had tried to leave that life behind, it was a part of her, an inseparable part of who she was. As the plane landed safely at the destination, Captain Harlow gave her a nod of respect. "Thank you, Falcon. Truly. You're remarkable." Emma returned to row 9, sitting quietly as if nothing had happened. The notebook on her lap remained open, the symbols still scattered across the pages. She glanced out the window, watching the clouds part in the evening light. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of belonging, not just in the ordinary world, but in the extraordinary life she had inherited. In row 9, a quiet girl had become a legend. Not because she sought recognition, but because when the world needed her most, Falcon answered the call. And for Emma Lane, the flight was no longer just another journey, it was the moment she remembered who she truly was.